7 Clues. Evelyn discovered in the haunted manor, a tale of mystery and shadows. In the heart of an ancient forest, where towering trees formed a canopy so thick that sunlight rarely touched the ground, there existed a small, secluded town named Black Hollow. The town was enshrouded in a dense fog that never lifted, casting an eternal twilight over its cobbled streets and ivy-covered buildings. Few ventured into the town, and those who did often left with tales of strange whispers carried on the wind and shadows that moved where none should. At the center of Black Hollow stood Hawthorne Manor, a sprawling estate with a history as dark as the forest surrounding it. The house had been abandoned for decades, yet the townsfolk spoke of flickering lights in its windows and faint music that played late into the night. Children dared each other to approach its wrought iron gates, but even the bravest among them never crossed the threshold. The latest chapter in the manor's ominous tale began when Evelyn Thorne, a young historian with a penchant for uncovering forgotten truths, arrived in Black Hollow. Evelyn was drawn to the manor not by the legends but by a journal she had discovered in an antique shop. The journal, penned by a woman named Amelia Hawthorne nearly a century ago, hinted at a secret hidden within the estate, one that promised both danger and enlightenment. Evelyn's arrival did not go unnoticed. The townsfolk, wary of outsiders, watched her with suspicion as she settled into the old inn by the square. Whispers followed her wherever she went, warning her to leave Hawthorne Manor alone. But Evelyn was undeterred. She was no stranger to fear, having faced her own demons while unraveling mysteries in the past. Her curiosity burned brighter than her apprehension. One crisp autumn morning, Evelyn set out for the manor. The forest seemed to close in around her as she walked, the air growing colder with each step. When she reached the gate, she found it unlocked, a strange detail, considering the locals' aversion to the place. Pushing it open with a groan, she stepped onto the overgrown path leading to the house. The manor loomed before her, its Gothic spires piercing the grey sky. As Evelyn approached, she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching her. The whispers began, soft at first, like leaves rustling in the wind, then growing louder, forming fragmented words she couldn't quite decipher. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of decay and neglect. Dust coated every surface, and cobwebs draped the furniture like delicate veils. But amidst the desolation, there were signs of recent activity. A candle burned low on a mantel, and a teacup sat half full on a side table. Evelyn's pulse quickened. Someone had been here. Guided by Amelia's journal, she made her way to the library. The room was vast, its shelves packed with ancient tomes and manuscripts. In the center stood a grand desk, and on it lay a leather-bound book that matched the description in the journal. As Evelyn reached for it, the door slammed shut behind her. She spun around, her heart racing, but saw no one. The whispers intensified, swirling around her in a cacophony of voices. Suddenly, one voice rose above the rest, a woman's voice, clear and pleading. "Help me," it said. The room grew colder, and a figure began to materialize in the corner. It was a woman, her translucent form dressed in the style of the 19th century. Her eyes, filled with sorrow, met Evelyn's. "Amelia?" Evelyn whispered. The ghost nodded, her movements slow and deliberate. "You must uncover the truth," she said, her voice echoing as if it came from a great distance. "They must not remain in the shadows." Before Evelyn could ask who they were, the apparition vanished, and the room was plunged into darkness. A sharp, icy wind swept through the library, scattering papers and extinguishing the candle. Evelyn clutched the book to her chest and stumbled out of the room, her mind racing with questions. Over the next few days, Evelyn pieced together the fragmented story hidden within Amelia's journal and the book she had taken. It spoke of a secret society that had operated within Black Hollow, using the manor as their base. They dabbled in forbidden rituals, seeking to bridge the gap between the living and the dead. Amelia, a reluctant participant, had tried to expose them but was silenced before she could succeed. Determined to finish what Amelia had started, Evelyn delved deeper into the manor's secrets. Each room held clues, an old letter here, a hidden compartment there. But with every discovery, the shadows grew darker and the whispers more insistent. It became clear that the society's influence lingered, and they did not want their secrets revealed. On the final night of her investigation, Evelyn uncovered the society's meeting chamber hidden beneath the manor. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, and the walls were lined with symbols that pulsed faintly with an eerie light. At the center of the room was a stone altar, and above it, a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to draw in all light and sound. As Evelyn approached, the whispers became deafening, and shadowy figures emerged from the walls. They encircled her, their forms twisting and shifting, their faces obscured. "You cannot undo what has been done," one of them hissed. Summoning all her courage, Evelyn held up Amelia's journal. "The truth will not remain buried," she said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her. The shadows recoiled, their forms disintegrating into the air. The vortex above the altar began to collapse in on itself, emitting a blinding light that consumed the room. When Evelyn awoke, she was lying outside the manor, the first rays of dawn breaking through the mist. The whispers were gone, and the oppressive weight of the shadows had lifted. In her hand was Amelia's journal, now blank, its purpose fulfilled. Evelyn returned to the town, her presence no longer met with suspicion but quiet respect. Though she never spoke of what she had seen, the townsfolk noticed a change in the air, lighter, freer, as if a great burden had been lifted. Hawthorne Manor remained abandoned, but its windows no longer glowed at night, and the whispers that had haunted Black Hollow were silenced at last. Evelyn moved on to her next mystery, leaving behind a town forever changed by her courage and the whispers of a woman who refused to be forgotten. Months passed since Evelyn's departure from Black Hollow. The townsfolk began to rebuild their lives, freed from the weight of the manor's dark influence. Yet, as time wore on, subtle changes began to stir, a fleeting shadow in the forest, a faint murmur on the wind. It seemed that while Evelyn had silenced the darkness, she had not destroyed it entirely. Evelyn, now in a distant city, had moved on to her next historical endeavor. She had become something of a legend among academics, her quiet confidence masking the haunting memories of Black Hollow. But one night, as she reviewed old manuscripts in her dimly lit apartment, a familiar chill crept into the room. The journal, Amelia's journal, sat on a shelf behind her. Though it had been blank when she left the manor, its cover now glimmered faintly under the light of the lamp. Evelyn hesitated before reaching for it, her fingers trembling as she opened it. The pages were no longer blank. Instead, they were filled with new entries in Amelia's distinct handwriting. "They are not gone. The darkness stirs. You must return." A knock at her door startled her. She closed the journal quickly and stood, her heart pounding. Peering through the peephole, she saw a young man, no older than 20, with a pale, frightened expression. "Miss Thorne?" he asked when she opened the door. "Yes?" I'm from Black Hollow. We need your help. The manor, it's alive again." The words sent a jolt of dread through Evelyn, but she nodded, already knowing she couldn't refuse. Evelyn returned to Black Hollow with the young man, who introduced himself as Thomas, a descendant of one of the townsfolk who had served the Hawthorne family. He explained that strange occurrences had resumed, cattle found dead with no wounds, lights in the forest at night, and children speaking of voices calling their names. The manor was no longer the desolate ruin Evelyn had left. Its once crumbling facade had been restored, its windows gleaming as though freshly cleaned. Inside, the air buzzed with energy, and the shadows seemed thicker, more deliberate. This time, Evelyn was not alone. Thomas had gathered a group of locals determined to rid their town of the manor's influence once and for all. Among them was Margaret, the town's healer, who claimed to have knowledge of ancient rituals, and Caleb, the blacksmith, whose strength was as reassuring as his resolve. Amelia's journal guided them deeper into the manor's secrets, revealing chambers and passages Evelyn had not discovered before. Each room seemed alive, reacting to their presence with shifting shadows and eerie sounds. The group's resolve was tested at every turn, but Evelyn's determination kept them moving forward. In the deepest part of the manor, they found a door engraved with the same symbols Evelyn had seen in the society's chamber. Behind it lay the source of the darkness, a pulsating mass of shadow, its form constantly shifting as though it were alive. The whispers were deafening now, and the air felt heavy, pressing down on them like a physical force. Margaret stepped forward, holding a bundle of herbs and a bowl of sacred water. She began chanting in a language none of them understood, her voice steady despite the oppressive atmosphere. The shadows writhed and lashed out, but Caleb shielded her with his body, enduring the cold touch of the darkness. Evelyn, clutching Amelia's journal, stepped closer to the mass. The book grew warm in her hands, its pages glowing with a soft golden light. The shadows recoiled from the light, and the whispers turned into screams. "Finish it!" Evelyn shouted to Margaret, her voice cutting through the chaos. Margaret's chant reached a crescendo, and the bowl of water erupted into flames. She hurled it at the mass, and the room was engulfed in blinding light. When the light faded, the group found themselves outside the manor, which now lay in ruins. The oppressive energy was gone, replaced by a sense of peace. Evelyn held the journal, its cover now dark and cold. She knew its purpose had been fulfilled. The townsfolk thanked Evelyn and her companions, their gratitude immeasurable. For the first time in centuries, Black Hollow felt free. Evelyn left the town once more, this time with the knowledge that the darkness was truly gone. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that the journal, now empty and silent, might one day find its way back to her, carrying another plea for help from the shadows. As Evelyn journeyed away from Black Hollow, the weight of what she had endured lingered in her mind. The whispers of the past had quieted, but they had left behind an indelible mark. She found solace in the belief that the town could finally thrive without the shadow of the manor, yet she also knew her role as a keeper of forgotten truths was far from over. In the weeks that followed, Evelyn returned to her research, this time with a sharper focus. She began piecing together a broader history of places like Black Hollow, areas tainted by similar ancient forces. What she discovered was both unsettling and intriguing. There were countless records of isolated communities around the world plagued by shadowy entities, mysterious disappearances, and ruins that refused to remain silent. The journal, though empty of words, became her compass. Occasionally, she would notice faint impressions on its pages, patterns of light and shadow that seemed to shift in response to certain artifacts or symbols she studied. It was as though the journal itself was guiding her, pointing her toward the next hidden story waiting to be unraveled. One day, as she sifted through an archive in a small European library, she came across an illustration that made her heart stop. It was a sketch of a doorway, eerily similar to the one in Black Hollow's manor, with the same enigmatic symbols etched into its frame. The accompanying text, written in a mix of Latin and Old English, told of a cult known as Umbra Veritas, the shadow truth. The cult, the text claimed, sought to harness the power of the eternal dark, a force they believed to be the origin of all creation and destruction. They built sanctuaries around the world, embedding their rituals into the land itself, ensuring the darkness would persist even after their mortal demise. Evelyn's pulse quickened. The manor in Black Hollow was only one of these sanctuaries. If the others were still active, the darkness might not be as contained as she had hoped. Determined to uncover the truth, Evelyn embarked on a new journey. Her research led her to an ancient ruin in Eastern Europe, nestled deep within a dense forest. Locals whispered of strange lights and sounds emanating from the site, warning travelers to stay away. But Evelyn, equipped with Amelia's journal and the knowledge she had gained from Black Hollow, pressed on. The ruins were breathtaking, with towering stone pillars covered in the same cryptic symbols. In the center stood a stone altar, cracked and worn by time. As Evelyn approached, the air grew colder and the familiar sensation of being watched settled over her. She opened the journal, hoping for guidance. This time the pages began to fill with text before her eyes, written in a hand she did not recognize. The words spoke of a ritual to seal the sanctuary permanently, but warned of the cost, a sacrifice of something deeply personal. Evelyn hesitated. She had faced the darkness before, but the idea of giving up something precious terrified her. What would the ritual demand? Her memories, her freedom, her life? The ground trembled, and shadows began to coalesce around the altar. There was no time for doubt. Evelyn stepped forward, clutching the journal tightly. She began to read the incantation written on its pages, her voice steady despite the rising cacophony of whispers. The shadows resisted, surging toward her with an almost sentient rage. But as she completed the chant, a blinding light erupted from the altar, consuming the darkness. The whispers turned to screams and then silence. When the light faded, Evelyn collapsed to her knees, exhausted but alive. The ruin was now a lifeless husk, its power extinguished, but she felt a profound emptiness inside her, as if a piece of her soul had been taken. Evelyn returned to the village at the forest's edge, her body weary, but her resolve stronger than ever. She knew this was only the beginning. The sanctuaries of the Umbra Veritas were scattered across the globe, each harboring a fragment of the eternal dark. As she rested by the fire that night, she opened the journal one last time. A single line had appeared on the first page: "You are not alone." Evelyn smiled, a flicker of hope lighting her tired eyes. The shadows might never truly disappear, but neither would her determination to fight them. The journey ahead would be long and treacherous, but she was ready. For the shadows, no matter how deep, could never extinguish the light of those brave enough to confront them.